Russian mystic Grigory Yefimovich, 1869–1916, the controversial historical figure better known as Rasputin or the Mad Monk, who was credited with the power to cure illnesses and predict the future, became famous for the mysterious influence he exerted as a healer and advisor to the family of Tsar Nicholas II, especially the Empress Alexandra, which according to some made him the true owner of the will of the Romanov family, the last Russian rulers. Influence that, by the way, unleashed the discomfort of some Russian noblemen, like the Prince Felix Yusupov, that, next to other elevated personages of the Russian court, decided to kill it the night of the 29th of December of 1916, in a macabre episode that was left for always in posterity for the extraordinary resistance of the crazy monk to the most powerful poisons and bullets, an incredible case that you can check in this same channel. Rasputin, a word that comes from the Russian word rasputny, meaning dissolute, an uneducated but intelligent peasant, allegedly endowed with alleged paranormal powers and a reputation as a thaumaturge, showed from his earliest youth a fascination with the occult. When he was young he boasted that he possessed divining powers, assuring that I never dared to steal anything, for I was immediately aware of one of my comrades stealing. Even when this comrade stole a hidden object from a distant place, I could always see the object behind him. It is said that when he was 12 years old, in his native Siberia, after he saved his brother Mixcha from drowning, who would anyway die from pneumonia, Rasputin contracted a fever of unknown origin that was about to kill him. When he was convalescing in his bed he could hear that the peasants in the street spoke of a robbery, since they had taken the horse from a humble neighbor of the town. Rasputin suddenly got up from his bed and walked to the people who talked about the robbery, and to the astonishment of all, sat down on one of the peasants there and began to shout, "R. Pyotr Alexandrovich! You are the thief! You stole the horse!" The peasants, in fact, discovered that the mentioned Pyotr was the culprit of the robbery of the animal. From that moment, the villagers took the event as a miracle and began to see Rasputin as an envoy of God. Rasputin, before his convulsive death, also prophesied the advent of the bloody Russian Revolution, claiming that in his visions he had seen Russia wrapped in a black cloud and immersed in a deep and painful sea of tears. During his controversial life he made numerous prophecies, many of which became reality, while others augur a future of nothing encouraging for the earth and for those who inhabit it. Here are some of the creepiest predictions made by the crazy monk. 1. I feel that I must die before the new year. Rasputin was, in effect, murdered on December 29, 1916. However, I want to make it clear to the Russian people, the father, the mother of Russia and the boys, that if I am murdered by common murderers, and especially by my Russian village brothers, you, Tsar of Russia, remain in your throne, govern and do not fear for your children, because they will reign for another 100 or more years. But if I am murdered by the nobles, their hands will be stained by my blood, and for 25 years they will not be able to remove their blood. They must leave Russia. The brothers will kill the brothers, they will kill each other. And for 25 years, there will be no nobles in the country. Tsar of the land of Russia, if you hear the ringing of the bells, announcing to you that Grigory Rasputin has been murdered, you must know this: if your relatives have caused my death, then none of your family, or be none of your children or your relatives, will remain alive for more than 2 years. They will be killed by the Russian people. Pray, beg, be strong, think of your blessed family. 2. Every time I embrace the Tsar and the mother, and the girls and the firstborn son of the Tsar, my back is traversed by a shiver of terror. It's as if there were corpses in his arms. And then, I pray for these people, because I feel that in this, our Russia, is the one that needs the most. And I beg for the entire Romanov family, because the shadow of a long eclipse is laying upon it. The members of the Romanov family, Tsar Nicholas II, his wife Tsarina Alejandra and their 5 children, Olga, Tatiana, Maria, Anastasia, and Alexei, as Rasputin feared, would be shot by the Bolsheviks on July 17, 1918. The Tsar Nicholas II along with wife and their 5 children, before they were shot by the Bolsheviks. The Tsar Nicholas II along with wife and their 5 children, before they were shot by the Bolsheviks. 3. The living shall not have peace, neither shall the dead have peace. 3 moons after my death, I will see the light again, and the light will turn to fire. It will be then that death will fly freely in the sky and will also rest on the imperial family. It will be 25 years and death will fly again. More years will pass and death, again, will fly. The first flight will be to collect the gold. The second flight will be to pick up the lead. The third flight will be to collect the grain. It is believed that this prediction Rasputin predicted the fall of Tsardom and the advent of the Russian Revolution, with 3 flights that probably represented Vladimir Lenin, Joseph Stalin, and Nikita Khrushchev, respectively. 4. At that time the great sowers will return to spread the seed, but a part of the earth will be smoking and a third of the seed will burn. Another part of the earth will be barren and the seed will die, but the third part will yield crops as copious as they have ever been seen on earth. At this time, the whole earth will be under the sign of an evangelist, the great island will be under the shadow of the lion, but the lion will lose the claws, the fair ground and the heart of Europe. 5. The cross shall be cast into the hold. The hammers will strike on the altars and the flames will devour the churches. From the cross will be blasphemed and the day will come when there will not be enough earth to bury the dead. But the empire will last little. When the sun sets, there will be no more grass at Volga. Only after a great distress and a great disturbance, the cross of the holy will return to the altars, supposedly speaking of the Stalinist purges, the installation of atheism after the Russian Revolution and the persecution of Christianity during the era of communism Soviet. Orthodox Christians celebrating Christmas in Russia. Orthodox Christians celebrating Christmas in Russia. 6. The darkness shall fall upon Petersburg. When his name is changed, the empire will be over. And when his name is changed again, over all Europe the wrath of God will be unleashed. Petersburg will return when the sun is over and the Virgin of Kazan is gone. Petersburg will be the capital of the new Russia and its treasures will be raised, which will be carried to all the lands of the Holy Mother, referring to future changes of name of the city of St. Petersburg, which was renamed Petrograd between 1914 and 1924, following the conflict with Germany during World War I, and Leningrad, after the triumph of the Russian Revolution and after Lenin's death between 1924 and 1991, after that year and a plebiscite, would be renamed St. Petersburg. 7. Men are walking towards catastrophe. It will be the least capable who will carry the reins. So it will be in Russia, as in France, in Italy, and elsewhere. Humanity will be crushed by the madmen and the evildoers. Wisdom will be chained. It will be the ignorant and the arrogant who will dictate the law to the wise and also to the humble. And then, most men will believe in the powerful and will not believe in God anymore. The punishment of God will be late, but it will be tremendous. And this will happen before our century is over. Then, finally, wisdom will be unleashed from the chains and man will come back to trust God fully, as the child entrusts himself to his mother. Following this path, man will reach the earthly paradise. 8. The womb of a woman shall be as the land of rivers, sterile will be both. And this will even be a grace, because the non-sterile uterus and the non-sterile earth will give birth to monsters. Unfortunate day will be one in which the maternal uterus will be marketed, as the meat of the cattle is marketed. At this time man, creature of God, will become a creature of science. 9. Poisons will embrace earth as a fiery lover. And in the mortal embrace, the heavens will have the breath of death, and the fountains will give only bitter waters, and many of these waters will be more toxic than the rotten blood of the serpent. The men will die from the air, but it will be said that they have died of the heart or the kidneys. The air that descends today to our lungs to lead the life, will one day lead to death. And the day will come when there will be no mountain or hill, there will be no sea or lake that is not enveloped by the fetid breath of death. And all men will breathe death, and all men will die from poisons suspended in the air. They will nurse the plants and die one after the other. The forests will become a vast cemetery, and among the dry trees will roam aimlessly, stunned and poisoned by poisonous rains. Speaking of environmental pollution. 10. The time will come when the sun will weep over the earth and her tears will fall like sparks of fire, burning the plants and men. The deserts will advance like wild horses without a rider, and the pastures will become sand, and the rivers will be the putrid navel of the earth. The tender grass of the meadow and the leaf will disappear, since the two deserts will reign, the desert of the sand and the desert of the night. And under the sun on the chilly cold it will extinguish life. 11. The seas will penetrate like thieves in the cities and in the houses, and the lands will become salty. And the salt will enter the waters and there will be no water that is not salty. The salt lands will not bear fruit, and when they do, it will be a bitter fruit. That is why you will see fertile lands become salt marshes. And other lands will be dried by a rising heat. The man will find himself under the salty rains and will walk on salty lands, and will wander among droughts and alluviums, referring to natural catastrophes, such as floods and droughts. 12. When Sodom and Gomorrah return to earth again and men dress as women and women as men, then you will see death passing by on the white plague. And the old pestilences will be like a drop of water in the sea, respect to the white plague. Mountains of corpses will be piled up in the squares, and millions of men will wear faceless death. Cities, with millions of inhabitants, will not find enough arms to bury the dead, and many villages with fields will be cancelled with a single cross. No medicine will manage to stop the white plague, because this is the anteroom of purification. And when 9 men out of 10 have rotten blood, the scythe shall be cast on the earth, for the time shall come to return home. 13. 2 bloodthirsty princes will take possession of the earth, Weag will come from the east and will return a slave to man with poverty, Greug will come from the west and will return to man the slave with wealth. The princes will dispute the earth and the sky, and the ground of the great battle will be in the land of the 4 demons. The 2 princes will be conquerors and the 2 princes will be defeated. But Greug will enter Weag's house and sow his ancient words, which will grow and devastate the earth. This is how Weag's empire will end. But the day will come when the empire of Greug will also be destroyed, because the 2 laws of life were wrong and both produced death. Neither can their ashes be used to cultivate the land, on which will grow the new plant of the 3rd light. 14. When the harvest time draws near, 7 signs will be sent to man. And every sage will understand that the grain is ripe, and it will not be long before the scythe is thrown on the earth. The earthquakes will increase in this time, lands and waters will be opened and among their wounds will engulf men and other things. Violence will be found every morning at the door of the house, because man will become a beast again and, like all beasts, will attack or be attacked, this man will no longer know how to distinguish good from evil. Whatever is honest, or moral, will become immoral. Food, in this time, will be increasingly scarce, because everything will be poisoned. At this time, the anguish will marry man, and from his spiritual union will be born despair, a desperation such as has never been seen on earth. And in this time, the seasons too will be distressed, because the rose will blossom in December and the snow will fall in June. 14. When men speak much of man, it will be the time when man will be neglected. And when one speaks of well-being, it will be the time when a subtle malaise will snake among the people. Mountains of words will be spent for nothing, and traps between words will confuse the ways of good sense. Many men will be destroyed by pestilence, many men will be destroyed by guns, and many will be destroyed by the arid words. For when times are ripe, man will be rich in language, but poor in heart. 15. When times are near the precipice, man's love for man will be a dry plant. In the desert of that land only two plants will flourish, the plant of profit and the plant of selfishness. The flowers of these plants may, however, be changed by the flowers of the plant of love. All humanity, in this cursed time, will be engulfed by indifference. Alas for those who suffer, for the old, for the invalids, for the afflicted of heart, for they will be alone in a sea of nations. And woe to the pure in heart, the simple, the men with the heart as a child, for they will be outraged and ridiculed. When the sad day of Homo sapiens grows dark, there will be nothing left but the desert of nothingness, because the plant of fraternal love will be dead for a long time. And fraternal love is the great medicine. The truths of God are made different by men, but the flame is unique. 16. Muhammad shall leave his house, walking the way of the fathers. And wars will explode like summertime storms, chopping down plants and clearing fields, until the day when it will be discovered that the word of God is one even if pronounced in different languages. Then the table will be unique, as only the bread will be. 17. For 3 days the sun will disappear from the sky, and for 30 days a mist of smoke and pain will make the earth a grey shroud. The man will roam like a mad dog in the sea of despair, his life will be an agony, and his only hope will be death. 3 days darkness. 18. When the man on the forehead comes to Rome, the bells of peace will sound, but few will be the ones who will notice that the one who pulls the strings is death. Subtle deceptions prepare for the whole world, because the mouse will escape the cat, and the cat will be eaten by the mouse. At this time, the glories will repeat themselves quickly, and the pains will be repeated. The Caesarus will pass like the water of the river and the words will be clouds. The man on the forehead will be put on the altar, but when the 5th spike is yet to ripen the appointed man shall be deposed on the bare ground, and with his flesh shall a feast be made. Poor glory of the world, you pass like a furtive shadow. Your time is always marked, even before your perfume expands. Poor glory of the world, clothed in gold and silver, but made of ashes. Do not look at the roads again, for the wind will fall on them and erase all signs. And the wind will open the lands, move the mountains, and erase the city with the sign of the sea. Do not turn around at this time to ask whether the wind blows from the west or from the east, because, when you have turned, the wind will have passed. 19. The story of Cain and Abel will be repeated in the place surrounded by the walls, with 7 towers and an eagle. This time will be the peaceful Abel who will kill the perfidious Cain, and nothing will remain of this history, because also the name of the city will be changed, and the earth will lovingly embrace good and evil. But in the city of the 7 towers will unleash a spark that will teach a new word and a new law. And the new law will teach man a new life, because in the new house you will not be able to enter with the old habits. And when the sun sets, it will be discovered that the new law is the old law and that man had been created by this law. 20. Monsters will be born, who will be neither men nor animals. And many men, who will not be marked in the flesh nor in the mind, will carry the sign in the soul. When, afterwards, the times mature, you will find in the cradle the monster of monsters, the man without a soul, supposedly referring to the individual of our present nihilist and capitalist society whose existential emptiness and insensibility impels him to reject all that the system does not urge us to seek.